Welcome to another episode of Mastering Cybersecurity, developed by baremetalcyber.com. Let's dive in. Backups form the recovery layer in Defense in Depth, quietly preparing for the day something important breaks or disappears. A backup is a separate copy of important data stored somewhere safer than the original system that uses it every day. For a campus bookstore, this might include order records, inventory lists, and customer account details saved regularly to another server or secure cloud location. If ransomware encrypts the main system or a hardware failure destroys a disk, those backups allow data to be restored without paying criminals or losing months of work. Backups also support human error recovery, such as when someone accidentally deletes a shared folder or overwrites an important spreadsheet. However, backups can fail quietly when nobody tests them, or when they reside online in places that ransomware can also reach and encrypt. Defense in Depth encourages separating backup locations, tracking backup schedules, and occasionally restoring sample files to confirm that recovery truly works. When combined with the earlier layers, backups turn many security disasters into messy but manageable cleanup projects rather than permanent catastrophes. A small clinic that recovers from ransomware using tested backups may still face inconvenience, but it avoids long downtime and painful data loss. In this way, the backup layer complements controls that try to prevent incidents, accepting that some damage will always slip through earlier defenses. Defense in Depth often organizes these teammates into three intuitive groups, covering the network, the device, and the identity using that device. The firewall mainly guards the network path, shaping which external connections can reach internal systems and which never arrive at all. Endpoint protection mainly guards the device itself, watching programs, files, and behaviors on laptops, desktops, and mobile phones connected to that network. MFA mainly guards identity, verifying that the person logging in truly possesses the right combination of knowledge, devices, or physical traits. When someone visits a campus bookstore site from outside, the firewall of that site decides whether the connection type looks acceptable or suspicious. If a malicious file downloads to a staff laptop, the endpoint agent on that device evaluates its behavior and may block execution or quarantine it. When a staff member logs into the management portal, MFA checks both the password and the second factor, preventing reuse of stolen credentials alone. Thinking in these three groups clarifies which tools protect which parts of the journey, from the external network edge inward towards sensitive data. It also highlights gaps, such as strong device controls without MFA, where stolen passwords might still open important systems too easily. Organizing layers this way gives beginners a simple mental map that supports more advanced topics later, including segmentation and role-based access ideas. Logging and backups extend that mental map by handling detection and recovery rather than directly blocking or filtering activity in real time. Logging watches what travels across the network, what happens on devices, and who passes identity checks, then records those facts for later review. Backups preserve the results of that activity, capturing databases, documents, and configurations so they can be rebuilt even after serious damage. In a simple campus bookstore example, login events, inventory updates, and web errors might flow into logs, while nightly backups capture the underlying database and file storage. If an attacker begins guessing passwords, the firewall may see repeated attempts. The login system will log failures, and later review can spot the pattern. If the attacker somehow succeeds and modifies records, backups from earlier times can help restore correct data once the intrusion is contained. This layer does not always prevent every problem, yet it turns invisible harm into visible evidence and reversible damage, which greatly reduces long-term impact. Defense in Depth therefore treats logging and backups as a kind of safety net beneath active controls, catching what slips past those earlier barriers. Beginners who learn this relationship avoid thinking of backups as purely routine information technology chores, and instead recognize them as strategic security assets. They also appreciate why logs must be stored, protected, and periodically read, because unread logs provide almost as little value as missing logs entirely. Phishing remains one of the most common starting points for attacks because it targets people directly rather than just exploiting software weaknesses. A phishing email is a message that pretends to be trustworthy, such as a fake shipping notice or pay statement, but actually tries to trick someone into harmful action. That action might involve clicking a malicious link, opening an infected attachment, or entering credentials into a counterfeit website controlled by the attacker. Phishing works well against busy staff at small clinics, campus bookstores, and community groups because the messages blend into everyday communication patterns. Attackers do not need to understand every technical detail in a target environment when simple deception can persuade someone to open the door voluntarily. Phishing often aims to steal passwords, install malware, or redirect money, which makes it extremely valuable to criminals seeking quick access to sensitive systems. Because phishing attacks begin in inboxes and browsers, they interact with many layers at once, including firewalls, endpoints, MFA, logging, and backups. Understanding how each layer responds gives beginners a clearer picture of why defense in depth matters more than any one tool alone. Instead of seeing a phishing attack as a single catastrophic event, they can see it as a series of opportunities for different layers to intervene. That perspective prepares them for the detailed scenario mapping that follows, where each layer earns its place by blocking or reducing specific steps. Consider a staff member at a community health clinic who receives an email pretending to be from a trusted supply vendor about an overdue invoice. The email includes a link to view the invoice, which actually leads to a fake login page designed to steal clinic portal credentials. At the network edge, the firewall may already provide basic protection by blocking connections to known malicious domains or suspicious hosting providers used by the attacker. If the attacker uses a new domain that passes that check, the endpoint protection on the staff member's computer may still detect the fake page or malicious scripts it tries to load. When the staff member enters a username and password, MFA on the clinic portal can prevent those credentials from granting access unless the attacker also controls the second factor. Even if the attacker somehow bypasses MFA, logging on the portal and supporting systems can record unusual access patterns, strange locations, or suspicious administrative actions taken immediately afterward. If the attacker changes billing details or tampers with medical records, backups from before the incident can help restore accurate information once security staff identify the intrusion. Throughout this story, each layer has a chance to interrupt the attack, from blocking the domain to refusing stolen credentials and finally restoring damaged data. Even if the attacker slips past several layers, the remaining ones still reduce harm and shorten the path back to normal operations. This scenario shows defense in depth as a chain of many small chances to succeed, rather than a single desperate hope for one perfect control. Imagining the same clinic scenario without certain layers reveals how the remaining controls must work harder and why gaps become dangerous. If the clinic lacks MFA, a stolen password from the fake portal immediately grants direct access, forcing endpoint protections and firewall rules to carry more risk alone. If the portal also lacks good logging, staff may not notice unusual behavior quickly, allowing the attacker to move quietly for days or weeks. Without reliable backups, any destructive actions such as deleting records or encrypting files might become permanent, making recovery far more painful and incomplete. In this weakened environment, even a modest phishing campaign can escalate into a major incident because no safety net catches the attacker at later stages. By contrast, strengthening just one missing layer, such as enabling MFA or improving backup routines, can significantly change the outcome of similar attacks. Defense in depth encourages organizations to examine how each layer behaves when others fail, highlighting where a small investment yields the largest safety improvement. A campus bookstore reviewing its design might discover that logging exists but nobody checks it, or that backups run but never undergo restoration tests. Seeing these weaknesses through a layered lens helps prioritize efforts such as training staff, enabling MFA, or scheduling routine backup recovery exercises. Each improvement reduces reliance on any single control and moves the organization closer to a resilient posture where accidents remain survivable. Defense in depth ultimately teaches a practical way to think about cybersecurity, treating protections as cooperating layers instead of isolated gadgets or intimidating jargon. Firewalls shape network paths, endpoint protection guards devices, MFA protects identities, logging reveals what actually happened, and backups repair damage after serious incidents. Together, these layers turn a simple phishing message from a likely disaster into a manageable event with many opportunities to contain harm. Beginners who understand this layered picture can evaluate new security tools more calmly, asking which layer they strengthen and how they interact with existing controls. A small clinic, a campus bookstore, or a community fundraiser organization may never become experts in every detail, yet they can still design safer environments using these ideas. Over time, repeated decisions that respect defense in depth create habits, documentation, and expectations that support steady improvement rather than short-lived, one-time fixes. Even when incidents occur, those layers help ensure there is evidence to review, data to restore, and pathways to strengthen protections before the next attempt arrives. Defense in Depth therefore offers more than a slogan, delivering a practical framework that supports everyday cybersecurity decisions across many different environments. Mastering Cybersecurity uses this framework to explain how tools work together, making complex topics understandable for people beginning their security learning journeys. This has been Mastering Cybersecurity, developed by BareMetalCyber.com, exploring defense in depth as a set of layers that truly work together. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.